What's up, everybody? So, this is part two of the Ramayana. I'll leave a link below for part one if anybody wants to watch it. But I want to start off with a clip from that video on Hanuman, who is actually Shiva incarnate. And in this video, we'll build up on the theme of Hanuman leaving a trail of destruction everywhere he goes. This is about a 3-minute clip from the first video. If you want to skip it, you can go to 3:30 and pick up where we left off. It's known as Hanuman's leap. He climbs up on a mountain, and in his mind, Hanuman had already crossed the sea and entered the demon city. So it's all in your mind. Everything out there is actually going on inside. His feet began to fill up with power. He grew very large and heavy, and his tread pressed down the hill and crushed the caves of serpents, out of which came the richly dressed Nagas of the underworld. The serpent kings, bruised and hissing, their hoods spread wide in their anger. They rolled on the ground with tongues flaming. They spat fire and bit the rocks in passion. Their venom cracked the hill, and gleams of red metal and stone shone from within the earth. Hanuman climbed higher still. He neared the summit. His feet squeezed water from the hill. Rivers tumbled down. Rock slides rolled. Fresh, bright, broken veins of gold sparkled. Tigers ran off and birds flew away. Tree spirits fled. And in their dens, the wildcats yelled in a frightful chorus like the cry of the mountain itself. He bent his knees, swung back his arms, and on one finger gleamed Ram's gold ring. Then, without pausing to think, he drew in his neck, laid back his ears, and jumped. It was a grand jump, the greatest leap ever taken. The speed of his jump pulled blossoms and flowers into the air, and they fell like little stars on the waving treetops. The animals on the beach had never seen such a thing. They cheered Hanuman. Even the air burned from his passage, and red clouds flamed over the sky. Hanuman was like a comet, pushing the sky from his way and bumping clouds aside. The wind roared under his arms and was pushed down from his breast. As he passed and made the ocean pitch and roll, sea spray rose and steamed up, as if the sun were beneath Hanuman as he went. The green salt water parted, and he could see the whales and fishes like people surprised at home. The air around Hanuman became electric, and sheets of light gathered and crackled blue and pale, and flickering orange and red. Okay, is everybody picking up what they're laying down here? There's no doubt in my mind that they're describing some ancient catastrophism here. Loud roaring noises. It was as if the sun were beneath them, burning things up. The stars were falling, setting all the trees on fire. Huge electrical storms going off. I mean, even down to the being able to see the fish down in the ocean. I've read some accounts of that just 700 years ago. And then that's usually followed by a 600-foot wall of water. Okay, so now Hanuman is on the island of Sri Lanka, and the first person he meets is this demoness. She confronts him, and he hits her in the face, and blood pours out of her nose. And kind of the last thing you expect after that is she falls on her knees in praise of Hanuman. She said that I had a dream that the end of the demon race would come when a monkey hit me in the face and caused blood to pour out. So she's actually wanting the end of the demon race because, hey, it's a bad incarnation. Now, if everybody understood that this is how the universe works, you just keep getting recycled and incarnated over and over again, everybody would be for some type of eugenics program, right? We selectively breed everything, all the animals, all the fruits and vegetables, but not human beings. And I'm sorry, you call me whatever you want, but I walk around all the time and say, oh God, I hope I don't come back like that. But you wouldn't want to be stuck in a crippled, hurting body. And there's a lot of people that suffer their entire lives over things that weren't their fault, really. I guess karmically, yes. But I think if people just knew that, hey, that might be you next time, they'd be a little bit more open to having a higher standard in breeding. That's all I'm saying. That's a whole topic in itself. So Hanuman turns himself into a little mosquito, starts, mosquito size, starts looking all around. And this is the most beautiful, amazing city. He's not fazed by it, but he understands he's in a palace of the utmost technological advancement, which I think is demonic at its core as well. And he finally finds Sita. Now, Ravana had just showed up and says, hey, you're stuck here. You got to marry me. She says, no, you are to Ram as a firefly is to the moon. So Ravana gets rejected, says, okay, look, I'm going to give you 30 days and you're either going to marry me or that's it. And some of the demonesses try to tell her, hey, he's a handsome guy. He's a big stud. What woman can resist those 10 heads? While other demonesses just scare the crap out of her. So Sita's sitting under a tree crying, and Hanuman comes up from above and drops the ring down, and she sees that it's Ram's, and then the little tiny monkey, the size of a mosquito, hops down there and says, hey, Ram sent me, and I've got a whole monkey army with me. And she says, well, that's great. You showed me the ring. I trust that you're actually from Ram. But if all the other monkeys are little pygmies like you, I don't think you're going to do much good against this big, strong demon. And of course, he's got a whole army. Upon hearing this, the monkey reveals his true form, colossal as a mountain, terrible in battle, possessing great might and full of valor. And then the monkey says, I've been a long trip. I'm really hungry right now. Can I eat some of this fruit off the trees here? And she says, well, these trees are guarded by the best guards, the most bad demons. And Hanuman isn't worried about it. He starts munching down on the trees. And when they come, he starts ripping trees out of the ground, throwing them at him, throwing huge boulders. Once again, associating Hanuman with all of this fierce destruction. Well, Ravana hears about this giant monkey out there tearing up his groves, and he decides to send his son Indrajit, who is kind of a magician or sorcerer or something. But he has this special arrow that was a boon from one of the gods. So he throws the arrow at Hanuman, and it tangles him up in rope. Hanuman could have broke this rope, but then he would be denying the boon. So he's taken in front of Ravana. They go back and forth a little bit, and he says, I see you're upset by seeing the beauties of my city. And Hanuman says, I'm an animal. What you call beauty doesn't turn my head. I cross the ocean as a person without attachment to worldly desires. The monkey just casually drops the key to life. Ravana says, okay, monkeys take a lot of pride in their tails, so as a punishment, set his tail aflame and carry him through Lanka. Now the demons are all happy. They've got some sport here with Monkey. But as they're taking the oil and rags and putting it on his tail, he keeps growing his tail and growing his tail. And they end up dumping all the oil in the city on there. As soon as they light it up, he shrinks down a little bit to get out of his bonds and starts jumping building to building, setting the whole city on fire. So once again, very vivid imagery of major catastrophism. Hanuman makes his way back to Ram, gets the whole crew together, and they start heading down towards Lanka. They get to the edge of the ocean, and they decide they're going to have to make a bridge to get across there. Only they don't know how to do it. So they ask the ocean for help, and the ocean kind of ignores them for a little while. And then finally he comes up and says, well, okay, look, you have, and get this, you have these two people in your troop out there, Naya and Nala, and they have a boon that anytime they touch a rock, it floats. Now, for the most part, I stay away from the ancient buildings and how they do it and all that crap. It's just that people have gone way too far with it. And I mean, still to this day, people use hammer and chisel to do stonework. And when people with artistic skills start learning that craft, from the age of 6, like they did back in the day, yeah, they're going to be really good at it. And there's a good video on here of a temple down in Hawaii that they built in the last 20 years and show them out there all day and make these beautiful carvings. Anyway, there is something to that, saying that these two gods, or these two people or whatever they were, had a boon from the gods to where they could float these stones. So, I could buy into this might have been a thing, especially like Baalbek. I mean, I know there's impossible huge structures out there, and I don't know how they did it, but nobody was floating stones around 500 years ago. 5,000 years ago, before a giant monkey in the sky burned the earth down, that I can buy, because then everything's wiped out and you're not going to find it. So they start building this bridge. These two people touch the stones and they'll float. The monkeys are pushing them all out there, and then the chipmunks decide that they want to help. So they go on the beach and they get all the sand in their fur and they're running out on the bridge, and then they shake all the sand out and help cement everything into place. And a monkey comes along pushing a big, huge stone and says, "Out of the way." Now, the chipmunks are thoroughly offended by this, and they go to Ram and say, "Hey, man, we're helping you out here, and this monkey's being rude to us." So Ram says, "Okay, don't worry about it. I'll go have a talk with him. We'll get this all straightened out." And then he reaches down and strokes them down the back, and that's why chipmunks have those little stripes down their back. So they build this 20, 30-mile bridge that's still there, and they march over, and a horrible battle ensues. These are demons with a lot of dirty tricks and illusions that they can use, so the thousands of them appear to be hundreds of thousands. Then every time you kill them, millions appear. But Ram and the monkeys and the bears are constantly winning these battles and destroying the illusions, and Ravana just can't believe that he's actually being defeated by mere mortals and animals. So he goes back to his son, who's constantly doing devotions to the gods and getting all of these magical powers, and says, "Hey, you got to magic something here." And his son says, everybody has a choice of two ways, right or wrong. You just had an army of millions of monkeys and bears build a bridge across to your island, and you never thought that you're in any real danger here. But even if time and death themselves overlook you when your life is full, you can now find no safety from Ram if you keep his wife. There's always a choice, the way of life or the path of death. And Ravana says, yeah, but come on, just off him for me, please. And Indrajit said, "I tried to do that once." And then he really lays into his dad and said, "When you were young and strong, you followed your Dharma, and by sacrifice, you ruled the world. Yet once the throne of power was achieved, you slighted Dharma, you had no courtesy towards life, you drove out kindness and denied freedom to the universe, and you made creation suffer. The worlds are large, but your selfishness overmatched them now, and your wrongs devour us. You captured Indra, the king of heaven, once before me, but now Dharma is on Ram's side. His army and his weapons are but the material instruments of time." Now, that's interesting, because we always think in terms of good guy, bad guy, or good king, bad king, and that the forces of Dharma, the cosmic source, is always going to be on the side of the good king. But the good king this year is the bad king next year. So the forces of the universe can be on your side one minute, and then the next minute somewhere else. God doesn't just say, "I'm going to use Jimmy to make everything right in the world." He's going to use Jimmy for a few minutes, and then once he's served his purpose, it's going to use Jane for a few minutes. So there's a lot of good cosmic law teachings stuffed in here, a lot more than I've found in the Old Testament lately, right? But finally, Ravana gets his son to help out a little bit, and he does something special that wounds Lakshman in the battle. A wise man sees what has happened here, and he says, "Well, the only thing that'll save Lakshman is this herb that exists up in the Himalayas on a special mountain." So Hanuman says, "Well, I can get there and get it in time." So he takes off and he jumps over to the Himalayas. And one more side note, if you guys have ever heard of the Monkey King, that is an awesome story I should do a video on sometime. But there's a lot of similarities between Hanuman and the Monkey King, especially this jumping and flying great distances. But Hanuman gets to this special mountain, and he can't remember which herb it was that the wise man told him he was supposed to get. So he picks up the whole mountain and jumps back with the entire mountain. So now we have a flying mountain associated with Hanuman. So after he gets back with an entire mountain, they're able to heal Lakshman. The battle continues on. Finally, they pretty much defeat the whole army. And then there's this story of the night before Ravana is going to die. He comes out on his parapet of his castle and he starts to dance. Then he walks down the stairway and he meets Time on the stairway. Time looked up and grinned happily. Now at last your life is over and you must pay me for the sins of a lifetime. You're about to die now for all eternity. Hell awaits you, even your memory will be lost in endless years of silence. You'll never again meet a friend or see any place you love, so go and wear your best jewels for who will wear them later. Indeed, says Ravana, I smile at your folly. Oh, do you? Do you believe, Demon King, that I only have control of others? I'll have the last word. I'll humble you and break your spirit. Ravana laughed. He threw out his 20 arms and barred the stairway and looked down at Time. Why, I have all the time there is. You're the thief, not I, said Ravana. For a few moments' pleasure, you take whole lives in payment. And whatever you give, you steal back by fraud. Death and misery are your good friends, but you yourself are unreal. You do not exist. Do you know who I am? Cried Time. Ravana answered, You're a marketplace of sorrows, a well of lies. You're a fraud, and you know it. You dare menace me, snarled Time. Ravana made ready to seize Time and crush him, then but lightly touches him and stands back up straight. Time starts to sweat, looks around, his face was worn and battered, and his voice cracked when he spoke. Why, it's all dusty. Everything here is covered over with fine dust. Ravana stood and watched as Time faded and vanished with a puzzled look, ever still trying in vain to say something more. Okay, so this is an epic. Everybody knows how it wins. The good guy kills the demon and gets the girl, right? I'm going to skip the 15-minute battle scene, which, by the way, absolutely destroyed movies. Movies were actually good at one time, but now it's just one big battle scene. And not even close to real. It's all just special effects. So back to the illusory nature of things. But here's the difference between a good epic and an epic epic. Remember how at the beginning, 3 days ago, when I said Ravana was actually a high yogi? Well, before being defeated, Ravana had a stone tablet inscribed for Ram. And it says, Dear Ram, think and remember how you promised Indra to kill me forever. See, now he's having that talk with Ram, waking up the memories that he is Vishnu, like the Bear King did earlier with Shiva. It says, nothing is forever except yourself. Except by dying at your hand, how else could I make you take me into your own self? I was a demon, after all, and you're very hard to approach. Yet, seeking wisdom, I learned many things. You do not know who you are again. See, Vishnu has incarnated several times at this point, never knowing that he's in this incarnation. And reading this, he still thinks he's just Prince Ram. Nothing you do ever fails. One glance of yours and people sing again the good old songs. You go everywhere and know everything that ever has or ever will be done. Did you think that I would not know that I saw that heaven was impermanent and that hell itself did not endure? I discovered the time of every life is one day full, and I found how all creatures that are separate from you are ever and again reborn over and over, always changing. I do not love things that come and go and slip away with time. Time itself I hate. I warned him when we first met. and I took him for an enemy. I never hurt her. I kept her to lure you here, where I offered my life to you and you accepted it. You are Vishnu, who moves on the waters. You flow through us all. You are Ram and Sita born out of earth. You are the poet and the players and the play. And born as a man, you forgot this. You lose the memory and take on man's ignorance again, as you will, I guess, every time. Therefore, welcome back your Sita. The war is done, and so I close my letter. So the whole thing was an elaborate setup from a yogi demon that understood that this was God incarnate. And one of the best stories ever told. And actually, the entire story is being told from the perspective of a poet holding water in his hand and gazing into the water's reflection and watching all of this happen. So Sita comes to Ram and the aerial chariot descends and they climb aboard on their Vimana and fly back to their kingdom. And Ram wants to give Hanuman a gift for being a loyal monkey. So he gives him this bejeweled bracelet, gold. They say a costly, irreplaceable ornament inherited from among the wealth of the solar kings. So once again, celestial innuendos. But the monkey takes this priceless ornament and he starts breaking it apart and putting the jewels in his mouth and crunching them like nuts and just tearing this thing up and frantically looking at it like he's looking to find something in there. And so Ram finally said, okay, whatever, dude, try to give you something. And Hanuman says, look, though this bracelet looked expensive, it was really worthless. For nowhere on it did it bear your name. I have no need of anything plain. And Ram says, well, then I can't see what value life is to you. Why don't you destroy your body as well? Then Hanuman takes his sharp fingernails and starts tearing his chest open. He tore open his flesh, and there was written again and again on every bone in fine letters was the name of God. And some versions say when he tore open his chest, there was Ram and Sita inside. So I'm not going to try to speculate. There's something going on there, though. So Ram takes his two hands, presses them together on Hanuman's chest, and the flesh heals over with no scar at all, not even one as big as a grain of dust. Ram took the ring that he had given Hanuman to carry to Sita, put it in the monkey's hands, and gently closed the monkey's fingers over it. Who is this monkey Hanuman? Rama has let him loose in the world. He knows Rama, and Rama knows him. Hanuman can break in or break out of anywhere. He cannot be stopped like the free wind in flight. Hanuman can spot a tyrant. He looks at deeds, not words. Words of talk cannot confuse a mere wild animal. Hanuman's rescue of brave poets in any peril may be had for their asking, and that monkey will break the handsome masks of evil kings. Hanuman will take you a sad tune and use it to make a happy dance. Son of the Wind. Thus ends the story of the Ramayana, in which everyone lives happily ever after. I don't know if I have much discussion left in me. This has taken a very long time. But what an awesome story, huh? I don't know how my telling of it was, but it's a story that I've thoroughly enjoyed several times in the past, and it just rings all the right bells. So I've been working on this a couple days, and I've got this whole ancient kingdom world in my head, you know, back when you had righteous kings that ruled over a righteous society, where if you go for a walk out in the woods, you might stumble across a sect of holy men out there, a world where honor is held above all other, a time when God himself came and ruled over the people for a while. And then today I watched a video on the Juggalo festival. And I'm not knocking it. 20 years ago, I'd have been right there. Yep, let's party. But I couldn't help but look at it and think of the Sumerian passage where Enki is talking about all of the humans and they make too much noise and we got to just wash them all off the earth. Or the days of Noah when men's hearts were constantly filled with wickedness. And it seems like left to our own devices, that's just where we go as humanity. Every time, over and over. And this will sound really weird to a modern mind, but is our youth better spent out getting trashed and debauched in every way possible than in the ancient world where they just suited everybody up in armor and sent them off to war? And I know that's a really weird juxtaposition there. But the gods never seemed to be against war. They never considered that a sin. And I'm not sitting here saying it's a good thing or a fun thing. But when you go through trials like that, I bet you have a very grounded sense of your mortality. And you have courage to face your obstacles. After facing life and death, doesn't it seem like the rest of life is going to be a bit of a cakewalk? They say it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. And after facing battles with all of your brothers that are in your community, you have a sense of trust and pride that is non-existent in today's world. And you probably have a world worth fighting for. Strong men produce good times. Good times produce weak men, and weak men produce hard times. That seems to be the cycle broken down to its smallest gear. And that is as a pebble is to the moon. The larger cycles of time are just so unfathomably huge. They say that we are just starting into this Kali Yuga, which is the shortest stage of the Yuga cycle, but it clocks in at 432,000 years. And I don't know, I just felt tired of this when I got here. This has been ever since I was a kid. But one thing about it that nobody ever mentions is if you merge into source, then you're a drop of water in an ocean. Then you lose all individuality. And honestly, it's not like many of us are at that point of attainment where we have that choice. I mean, there's yogis and bodhisattvas that have been at this for thousands of lifetimes and still not quite there. But if you did accomplish that, then I think you would just finally be at rest. But who knows? You could get to the end of this incarnation and wake up and realize you are a god all along. Because if Vishnu, the source of all things, can come to earth and not remember who he is, then I don't think he's going to fault any of us mere mortals for forgetting who we are while we're here. Maybe that's the whole point, that you are a spark of the divine, of source. And really, when I make these videos and put them out into the ether, I feel like I'm just spreading this to 10 or 20,000 other parts of myself that are out there, hopefully helping out with this internal struggle that is the universe in the mind of God. I used to close out videos like this and say, we are all one, but nobody was picking that up on the level that I was actually talking about. But I do think that that's true, that we are all just one. Static out.